Hello, and welcome back to Youth Code Jam's Online Bits and Bytes lessons. We're continuing with our Codemoji code unit. Today we're going to be doing an activity where we learn about some CSS, which is how to style a web page. So if you did the previous activity, which was called Favorite Animal, you'll get the basics. If you didn't, we still have to go through all the basics again on this one in order to style a web page, so you'll be just fine. Let's go ahead and get started. In your browser, pull up a new tab and go to codemoji.com. So that's one word, codemoji.com. And this will take you to the home page. Once we're here, we're going to click on the play button and go into the playground coding area. So a quick overview, this space right here is our workspace. We're going to be working with the index.html file. For anyone who's interested in websites, this is where all the HTML elements go. Your styles, our CSS today, will go into the cascading style sheet file. But we'll get to that in a bit. So the first thing we have to do is actually build our website so that we can style it. So what we have here when we start are our opening HTML and closing HTML tags. So that tells the browser that everything in here is going to be in HTML, and that basically informs the browser how to read the page. Anytime you have a website that you're building with HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language, one goes out the top and one goes out the bottom. Most of our tags will have opening and closing tags, so you'll need to see two. So right now, if I run the code and view code, our page is empty because there's nothing on it. It just tells it that this is an HTML page. Here's our opening, and here's the end of the page. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is add a head section with the panda icon here. So down here, it will tell you a little bit about what the tags are. So the head is an invisible part of your page. It's very important to the browser. It will store a lot of metadata. So a simple example is you could do an author metadata tag and put your name in there. We can't do that with this one. That function doesn't exist within Codemoji, but that's one thing you can do there. You also tell them what kind of characters to read for, what character library you're using. You can tell it this page is in English, this page is in Spanish. It's a bunch of information. That's where you'll link to your CSS. So typically your CSS is done in at least one separate document. It's not done in the HTML page. You try and keep everything as separate as possible so it's easier to change later. But we are going to include one thing, so we do need a head section. In fact, I think you have to include a head section no matter what, otherwise you'll get errors on your page. So we're going to bring one panda head over underneath that traffic light at the top, and then we're going to bring a second panda head down here, and just kind of leave a line or two between them. So now if I go to run code and view code, you can see I have my HTML tag still, and now the opening and closing head tags. So that's going to be the head section of our web page. You can also preview your page by clicking on the laptop icon over here. Again, there's nothing here, so you won't see anything. What we are going to add in this space is this little turtle icon with a title. So this is a title tag. Titles are not anything that show on the web page itself. They are for the browser and search engine optimization purposes, or SEO. So what that means is that it tells the browser and it tells search engines what the name of your web page is, or the name of your website, and that should be, if you're searching for it through Google or through whatever search engine you use, it will look for keywords in there and try and return that. So this, again, title is not something that ever appears on the page, but it does appear in the browser up here. So you can see on my tabs that we have the Codemoji right here, so that's the title. And over here, the title of this tab is the name of the video. It's the video slide I use at the start of it. So we're going to click this turtle, and we're going to place it between the two pandas. And you can see that it started here with an opening and closing. So some of these you'll have to drag two onto the page. Some of them will come with two already. So just click on the words, double click over or drag over the words. This is a title. And we're going to name this my first web page. Okay. And now if I run the code again and view code, again, our web page is empty. The title is not something that appears within the web page. It's talking to the browser. But you can see all of what the tags look like here. And we'll click back and forth between this a few times just so you guys can see what's going on. So close out of there. The next section we're going to work on is the body. So the body tag is represented by the hamburger. And this is where all of our elements that we want to be seen go. Now there will be sometimes as you get more advanced in web design where there's things that aren't visible go in the body, but for the most part, everything you put in the body is going to be visible to the viewer of the page. So we're going to click one body and place it under the second panda head, and then get a second hamburger and place it above the last traffic light. So we've created our body section, and the first thing we're going to do is give our web page a heading. So again, if I click on that preview, it's empty. So we're going to give it a heading using the H1 or the ice cream cone. So a little information, headings, think of them like headlines in a newspaper. There's 6 main sizes. They're labeled H1, H2, H3, all the way to H6. H1 is the largest, and typically you only do it once on a page. So you can have multiple H1s throughout a website, but it's typically only used once on each page. And it's supposed to either be the name of the page or the most prominent thing on your page. So if I come over to use code JAM, we can look at a couple things. So let's look at our website. I'm going to take us to the Bits and Bytes page. So this is an H1. It's we used it as the name of each section or each page. So that's at the top. It's the biggest. It stands out the most. You see it first. Why? Because we want you to know where you are within the website. So that's why it gets most prominent. After that, we have an H2. So it's different. They can be different styles. Typically, your headings are the same font family, but they can still differ. So we have a different style here for H2, and then here's an H3. So you use headings to kind of break up text, either different sections or subsections, and it makes it easier for people to look through your page and find what they're looking for. So they shouldn't be like full sentences. They should be pretty short, like a headline. And so yeah, that's an overview. We're going to just use this H1. That's all that's offered to us. And this is going to be where we name our website. So typically your H1 might be very similar to your page title because again, for search engine reasons, you're trying to make it easier to find the page. So if I was looking for a page called My First Website, then I would rename it the same thing as my title. You don't have to, but it's pretty common to see that. So I'm going to name that, and then because I ran out of space here, I'm going to take my cursor and click after that ice cream cone and hit enter a couple times so that I have some space. All right, so we have our headline, and now if we go to the preview mode, we'll see the headline right here. All right. So I'm going to switch back to emojis. The next thing we're going to do is add an image using the camera. So like so this is going to be a special tag, and I'll show you in just a minute why. So you see it flashing here like that. It's kind of fading in and out. Use your cursor and click on that and choose one of these animal emojis. I think I'm going to use a tiger today. And now if I click over at the preview, we can see the baby tiger. So that will show the image there. And then if I run code and view code, you guys can kind of see. So the image tag is a special tag. It only has one tag involved. It's not a pair like body or the H1 or the head. So like all the other ones, we had an opening and closing tag. The image tag is, let's call it all-encompassing, self-encompassing. And instead of putting something, because it only is one tag, we actually use an attribute called source and link to the image. So maybe you in Word or another word processing document, you've embedded a photo, so the photo actually is brought in and lives there. And you can edit it within that document to an extent. In a website, you're actually linking to the image and bringing it in that way. So it doesn't live on the page itself. You're linking to a file, and then that file is pulled in and read. So you use a source attribute to read that file link, and it's stored in a folder called images, and it's called a real lion. So they mislabeled their thing. It should be a baby tiger, right? But you can see here that the image tag is a little different than the other ones. All right, so we have our image picked, and then last thing we're going to add is a paragraph tag. So back to the traffic lights. The paragraph tag is represented by this newspaper, and we're going to place one underneath the camera. And it, again, just like the heading and the title, it already comes with two for us. So a paragraph tag does not mean you have to write 3 to 5 sentences every time you use it. It is basically used to hold basic, simple text. So it can be a few words, it can be one sentence or a couple sentences. It doesn't have to be a full paragraph, but it can be. Or it could be several paragraphs and you use a break tag in there to separate them, which we won't do today. We're just going to write a sentence or two. So I named it this, I think. So hello. I wrote something like this. So hello, this is my first website. It's fun to code with emojis. Okay, so I did something like that on my page. You guys don't have to write that much. You can write whatever you want. Just put something in there so that we can play with formatting it later. So now we are going to get into our formatting, and it's going to be pretty simple. This is a pretty simple site. We can't go too crazy, but it will get you that idea. The first thing I think we're going to play with is let's try out the heading. Let's go with the heading. So we're going to come back to H1. If you want to see what our page looks like real quick, we can do that. So we have our headline. Oh, I might have gone out of order here for you guys. Okay, that's all right. Sorry, I missed a step here. So we have our headline up here and our image down here and then our paragraph. And this order is fine. So you can see that it's reading the page from top to bottom. Whatever order we put things in is the order it's going to show in on the screen. So if I came in here and I wanted to put the camera above my headline, I would add an extra space there and just drag the image up. And now if I run my code and view my code, the picture's on top and the headline goes underneath and the body copy's right there. So when I say body copy, that's a holdover from newspapers. I studied newspapers. I've never heard of another a term that works for this one, so body copy is the main text that you see, all the words. On our website, this would be the body copy, right? So it looks like regular text. It's easy to read. Nothing too crazy is done to it. So back on our page, we're going to style the headline first. So if you didn't quite catch that, what you're going to do is take your cursor until you get that 4-way arrow icon and click once on the ice cream. So we're going to get 5 options here. The paint palette is going to allow you to choose the color of the text. This up and down arrow is going to allow you to choose the size. The family emoji here, this is your font family. So there are, I don't know if it's going to tell us. I don't think so. So technically there are different kinds of font families. There's something called sans serif, which is kind of this font right here. It has the decorations at the end. So and then there's or so that's serif, my bad. Sans serif is, or serif is something like Times New Roman or Times, something you might use for a class paper. Sans fonts they don't have any decorations, they're very square. It's kind of like what you see on our site, so Helvetica or Arial are common ones that appear on most computers. And then you have kind of decorative ones like these right over here. You can choose whichever ones you want. When you're choosing fonts, you want to make sure that they're legible to the user. Is the only requirement there. And just a random, this won't affect you guys right now, but when you go to start learning more about websites, the fonts are actually shown by what's on the computer. So if you are viewing a website that uses Times New Roman, but Times New Roman doesn't exist on your computer, it's going to default to the next closest font. So the reason it's called a font family is because you normally do a stack of font types to go along with that, and you'll have several options, and then you'll default to a generic serif font or a sans serif font, whatever you want to do. So all that to say, you'll pick one of these and test it out. This stack of papers is the alignment. So this is left aligned, which means it will show up all the way to the left. Center will center your text. Right aligned will put it all the way on the right. And justified means it will be spaced out so that it's all the way to the left and right. And sometimes you get weird spacing in there, so that's typically avoided. And then this top hat is special styles, so you can underline, bold, italicize, or do a strike through. So take a few minutes and play around with the fonts. Remember that you can preview your work over here. So let's say I wanted to do purple. You can see my text turns purple. And remember since it's an H1, our text is going to be big. So maybe I want to do the biggest or the second biggest. I think I'm going to stick with the second biggest. And then we can try out the different font families so that you guys can see what they look like. I kind of like that middle one, so I'm going to stick with that. You can play with alignment. So I think I'm going to go with center, just for fun. And then you can play with the different styles. So if you want to underline, you can do that. You can bold, if it's supported. So that one didn't really get bold because it's not supported by that font. And that's sometimes a thing. You can italicize, or you can strike through. If you want to undo this, I think you can just click the hat again. I'll just go to bold. You should be able to disable it. Okay, so we've played with that. I'm just going to click off into the white space to get rid of it. So we played with our font. We're going to do the same thing for the paragraph font. So it's the same icons. You can kind of play around with what that looks like. I'm going to do green. That's too big. So with our paragraph font, we don't want it to be bigger than our headline. So maybe I do that for the head. So maybe you want it visible and easy to read for the user, but you don't want it to be bigger than your heading. Let's center it. Why not? It's centered, okay. And then you can play around with the different font styles. So that's a sans serif like we were talking about. That's a serif. This is that's the same font as our headline. I'm going to do that. Okay, so the last thing we're going to format on our page is the picture. So we have different icons here, and I'm just going to expand them all. So the left and right arrow increases the size of your image horizontally, so across this way. So if I wanted to choose that middle one, I shrunk it horizontally, and I can make it bigger by doing that. And then if I want to do it vertically, so you see that shrunk it, it's all the way across because I have the biggest horizontal going. And you'll notice that automatically changed the height by just doing the going across, but you can manipulate it by changing the height even further. So when it will auto, just changing the width will auto change the height. So I'm going to make it as big as can be. If you had the space, you could add a background color. If there was like dead space behind the photo or something, these photos, it's not going to work, so you can play around with it all you want. You won't see anything. This little, I don't know, traffic barrier is going to allow you to add a border color around your photo. So you can do that if you want. I'm going to do orange. And then this networked world, or networked world here, you can change the shape of your photos. So you can do a circle, whatever that is. So you can play around with that. Right? And that is the end of our web page. So we're going to run the code and then click View Code. And we can see here, this is our web page. Very simple, right? And then we're going to come over here and see, there we go. So typically when you style a web page, this all appears in our CSS page. It did because of the coding environment, this is called Inline Style. It's very much frowned upon because it's harder to go back and change. If you do the same styles on, let's say we had 3 photos and we did the same styles, you'd have to go back and do them individually if you wanted to change them all. If you do a separate CSS file, then your style for the image element is all in one spot and you just change it in one place. But you can see here that it changed our radius border, which is what rounded the corners. We have our background, we have our height. So it changed some elements in here. You can kind of look at what it is. So these don't tell you exactly what things are. Within the Codemoji, it says we use style 2, align 2. So whichever option we chose will be there. And we can see that here on the style sheet, right? Radius 5 means a border radius of 10%. So our corners are rounded 10%. We chose border 4, which means we have a 5-point border, a 5-pixel border, which is the width, how wide that border is, and it's an orange color. If the background was visible, you'd see a blue background. Our height is 5, which means it's 100%, and so is our width. Our style, this is for our headline. So what's not seen here is that these are typically connected to the element itself. So you'll see like H1 and then a curly bracket, and it will tell you which element this style goes in. But you can kind of see that this is what it is. So here's the font family we used. Here's the sizes of our font colors and stuff like that. So that's all we have for this activity. You can keep playing around with the different elements and see how you can style them. Text elements I think are going to be pretty similar, but there might be something different. And that's all we have today. If you are interested in coming to our live sessions, they are where we work on these together and get to show off our work, and you can ask more questions if you have them. They're Mondays and Wednesdays from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And all you have to do, they are free, is click on either of these registration buttons, and it will take you to our partners website, which is Palo Alto College here in San Antonio. And they have 2 ways you can register. You can register for each series individually by just clicking the accordion drop expansion. So just click it and the accordion opens up and it shows you a summary of what we'll be working on for each unit. Or you can register for the entire year here. You will get emails Mondays and Wednesdays before the lessons with your invite and any activity sheets or documents that you may need. That is all I have for you. We will be back with some more Codemoji lessons, this time with animation activities.